we'll kick it off with our thoughts on the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast that aired immediately after Monday Night Raw last night with the one, the only, the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar, who also opened up Raw last night too, along with Stone Cold and The Undertaker. Great stuff. Before I give my thoughts on that, RJ, what were your initial impressions of the Stone Cold Brock Lesnar podcast?
I thought it was really good. This is probably the only, well, maybe the Vince one too, is the only podcast I actually watched after Raw. Usually I try to go to bed because I got class on Tuesday at 8. So, but I was like, no, it's Lesnar, I got to stay up and watch it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a good podcast. Like I said, started off first kind of like talking about their hobbies together, and then they finally divulged into like the business, how he went to college, how he got into the business, how he left, went to the UFC, came back. I think honestly he has a great story to tell, how he kind of was like, he came from like a rare upbringing. He was on a dairy farm. Then he kind of like saw sports, and that kind of like was his like I don't know, it's like his thing in life was like beating people up and playing sports is what he pretty much said. Yeah. That brought him to somewhere out of that dairy farm, went to Minnesota University, wrestled there. Then he graduated, and then he was like, what do I do now? Yeah. And then he kind of didn't know what to do. He was going to play football, maybe got called from Jim Ross, made the decision to go to OVW, went to WWE, went there for 2 or 3 years, didn't like it anymore, so then he went to New Japan, went to try out for the NFL, didn't work, and then went to UFC. Then after that, he got his disease, and then came back, and I just think the guy has a great story to tell. Like, he went from having it all, lost a lot, had a lot. Now he's just in the perfect situation that he wants to be. And he's just a straightforward guy. He's not going to lie to you. He's not going to beat around the bush. He pretty much said, like, I don't like people.
Love that part.
I think that was a great, like, what do you call the people that you work with? He's like, they're just people I work with. Like, I'm not going to go out there and have a beer with them after the thing. Like, I'm just go home, and, like, that's what I do. And I loved it when he said, when I came back, I need Haim with me so I could feed the Jew. Oh, my God.
Best part of the whole podcast.
Best part of the whole podcast. I need to feed the Jew.
Feed the Jew.
It was so funny. I couldn't stop laughing.
It's so funny.
I think it's just a great podcast with Stone Cold, and it was very entertaining.
And the guy gets a lot of crap for not being a great talker. Brock Lesnar, that is. But being inside, being in this kind of environment, being in the UFC environment, which he did talk about here in the promos that he did for his respective fights, were a lot better than any promo that he's going to cut on his own in a WWE ring in front of 10,000 people when they're scripting you lines and all this other micromanaged crap that is WWE in 2015. It's just not going to work that way. When he first came back, he talked about it. When he first came back to the company for a few appearances without Paul Heyman, and he had to cut his own promos and do all this and that. And he said, we have to bring back Paul Heyman to talk for me, because if I didn't have Paul Heyman talking for me, I would not be what I am today. And like you said, he talked all about his run. He talked about The Undertaker, his match this Sunday, the UFC run, and everything else in between, leaving back in 2004, flipping off Vince McMahon and not the fans at WrestleMania 20. He was like, I really just didn't give a shit. Austin was like, did you want to be there? He's like, no, because I just didn't give a shit. That was great. Like you said, a very straightforward guy. But kind of also on the same subject here, not really in relation to the podcast itself. But RJ, I ask you this: do you feel like it was better off? And I'm a big believer in everything happening for a reason here. But do you think Brock Lesnar was better off in leaving WWE when he did in 2004, going to New Japan, trying out for the NFL, successfully, having a successful UFC career, one of the biggest draws in that company's history, dominating over there for a couple years before coming back to WWE? Do you think it worked out better the way that it did, as opposed to him staying in WWE for an extra, 2 or 3 more years, before leaving in, 07 or 2008?
I think his decision to leave was better for him, and I think it was better for the WWE. Obviously, he wasn't happy being in the WWE at 04 and thought he had other things to go pursue. You're still young at the time. He's still pretty young now. Think of it, 14 years. He's still in his later 30s. So then he went out to the UFC, made a bigger name than he was before. Like, everyone kind of knew of him because he was a big star in WWE for 2 years. But people thought he was just like the scripted Hollywood guy that really couldn't fight. Was in the UFC for a couple of years, won the championship. Like I said, pretty sure he hit top 5 fights that brought the biggest draws. I'm pretty sure he has like 3 or 4 of them. Mm-hmm. I remember he was a main event for UFC 100. And he had won the title that night, too.
2009, I remember
2009, and he drew the most. I think they had the biggest draw ever. And
that was the Frank Mir fight, right?
Yep. No, that was a Randy Couture fight.
Oh, okay.
But, he, like I said, even at the end of his run, even when he was losing and stuff, he still had big bites. People wanted to see him fight. So then him coming back to the WWE, just the buzz of him coming back just made him even more popular. I think it's better for him because then, like, since he was so popular, you got the part-time schedule now, so he's making fat money like he loves it.
Yeah, he's like, whatever puts money in my pockets from Dana White and Vince McMahon. Love that line because I've always said this about Lesnar. I always said that not that he hated wrestling, but rather that he just didn't care about wrestling at all. But it's okay. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who don't care about wrestling at all and are wrestling in the business. But they don't say that. They say they genuinely love the business when they don't and whatever. Brock Lesnar is very straightforward, and I always go back to his book. Did you read that by any chance or no? His Death Clutch book. He released it in late 2011, early 2012. Very good book. He just says, I was in it for the money from the beginning. It's not like, oh, you know, I loved it at the start and WWE's vigorous road schedule beat it out of me. Like, I was only in it for the paycheck. No, he was in it for the paycheck the entire time. And he just so happened to be very, very good at what he did. But going back to earlier this year when the news first broke that he re-signed with WWE, we talked about it then when he did the interview with, I think, Coach, or no, that other lady who stopped watching wrestling who works at ESPN. Michelle Beadle, yeah, when he was doing the interview with her when he broke the news that he re-signed with the company. He does genuinely show passion for wrestling. You know, it's not like he refuses to do the job. I mean, he said that. It's like, you know, I'm here to do a job. I clock in, I clock out. And he's very good at what he does, and he just, you know, prides himself on being the best at what he does. And he is. He's great. He's the beast incarnate. So in regards to my original question, I feel like it definitely did benefit him in leaving for the amount of time that he did. Because if he didn't, he wouldn't have that same aura around him that he does now. You know, because now he has that, oh shit, like a former legit UFC fighter. It just like even before he broke the streak, like he had that aura about him that screamed superstar. And WWE throws that term around a lot. Zack Ryder is a superstar. Adam Rose is a superstar. But, like, by definition of the word superstar, this guy is in a whole other level, a whole other stratosphere of superstardom, even before he broke the streak, like I said. So I think leaving for those years and building up that mainstream attention and whatever in UFC, in New Japan, doing his own thing for a couple years, and then coming back to the WWE in 2012, having one of the best runs in the last 3 years, and it's far from over. He re-signed until 2017, 2018, whatever it was, but so happy that Lesnar's back in WWE. Really enjoyed this podcast, that it was very, very good.